a friend, someone to be there, someone who shows up, someone who isn't just talk, someone who does something, someone who's there when shit gets tough. Not just something you say to look good, not just a way to shove yourself into a community. Someone who is an ally.
Sur Ivelda. My mom stays in bed late some mornings. I knock on her door and she whispers out, "I'm just sick, Nina. Don't worry." She hides under the blankets while Papa heads out to the market. Abuela once told me that the way to a man's heart was through food. Each day and night, she would have the caldero on the stove, always trying to brighten the dense mood. When I go to bed, I would sometimes hear Abuelo calling her a prude. Mommy picked me up from their house on weekends and would try to make conversation with me. What I failed to notice were the blues and greens on her knees. And eventually my knees now have these blues and greens. My tight jeans hug too tightly on my hips, sometimes flushed with hues of red, but not from lips. My Nina sometimes look at me with her big chocolate eyes and asks, "Are you okay?" How do I tell her that this is the way Papa loves me, while the words are trapped by hands around my airways? How do I tell her that Mama is in pain and wants to run away? How do I tell her, that she should never let a man touch her, while those same hands that strip me find their way into a hug around her? But I swallow the words down deep into my stomach and say that I'm okay.
Before we start, I'd just like to say, please feel free to and to not answer any sort of questions that I may ask you. This is not to harm you or trigger you in any sort of way. But first I'd like to ask, would you be able to explain what you noticed before the assault?
Yeah, the perpetrator was stalking me beforehand. It's how I recognized him.
Oh, okay. So you say that you were afraid to talk about your story to the campus security or even let anyone know about what happened. Why was this?
I didn't feel like a welcoming or safe environment to disclose. I didn't even know if there were even resources available.
Your campus failed to provide safety to survivors?
Never told us anything about safe space.
What do you think is the best way to support someone who has gone through such a disgusting experience?
The best way to support someone is just to listen. Don't interrupt. Don't try to justify or relate. Don't tell us how you know how we're feeling. Don't give advice on how we should cope with it. And don't be angry. I'm already angry enough.
Thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you. So, who assaulted you?
Well, I was sort of dating this person.
Oh, so it was an assault then?
No, that's not what I was saying.
Sorry, but did you say no, clearly? Like, did they really hear you?
I shouldn't have needed to.
Alright, let's move on.
Okay, I think I'm okay.
Where did it happen?
I'd rather not say, but it was on my high school's campus somewhere where I should have been safe.
So you are transgender. Your transition was a result of the sexual assault?
No, of course not. If anything, I was more at risk because I am trans.
Innocent smiles, the pain they shield from the world, stories never told. It hurts you to hear me cry, she asks. It hurts you? Why? Because I could not stand by. When you cry, I cry.
We stand together and the world shakes before us with fists of rage and splendid cowardice they crumble. Every thought of victory shunned by warmth we've built within each other. The day is saved by love, and wrath cannot reign victorious.
When I was a freshman in college, I got very, very drunk at a frat party. So drunk that when my friend and I introduced ourselves to some guys, they asked which one of us was Jen, and I didn't know. One of the guys brought me into an empty bedroom and kissed me. After a minute, I started to panic and told him I wanted to leave. So he stepped aside and let me go. How do I remember this if I was so drunk? Because as soon as I left that room, I recognized how profoundly lucky I was. I was drunk. I was in a dangerous situation, but I wasn't raped that night because the guy wasn't a rapist. After college, I moved to New York. Once, after spending a night drinking and smoking pot with some friends, I decided to take the subway home. I got on the F train in the Lower East Side and only needed to take it a few stops to my Brooklyn apartment. Instead, I passed out. A conductor woke me up at Coney Island, the end of the line. Amazingly, no one had touched me. Even though I was passed out and dressed provocatively, I wasn't raped because there were no rapists on that subway. Dangerous situations don't cause rape. Skimpy clothing doesn't cause rape. Alcohol doesn't cause rape. Drugs don't cause rape. The only thing that causes rape is a rapist.
I want to tell a story. Once in high school, I felt insecure. I put on a tight top, too low cut, and dark lipstick I didn't usually wear. I went to a party and drank terrible wine coolers, too many of them. A man asked me if I wanted to leave. I slurred, said maybe. He said, maybe? And then he said maybe isn't yes, and I went home that night unassaulted because I hadn't talked to a rapist at that party. Another story. I went out drinking with girlfriends at a bar a few years later. I was flirting with a guy there. He grabbed my hand, pulled me aside, out into an alley. He kissed me hard and looked at me and said, yes? I didn't say anything. He said, go back inside then. Maybe he was annoyed, but he meant it. I went back inside. There wasn't a rapist at that bar. One time a guy and I had flirted. He invited me to his room. I went. We kissed. I said I liked it. He took off his clothes. I touched him. He tried to take off my clothes. I resisted. He said, seems like you're not into this. I said, He said, no, it's only fun if you want it. I said, I'm sorry. He said, it's okay. I left, unmolested. I was lucky. I hadn't met a rapist that night. I've been assaulted. I've also been not assaulted. The difference didn't seem to be what I was wearing, how flirty I was, how much I was drinking. The only difference seemed to be whether or not the men felt it was okay or not to assault.
The hearts, minds, and souls of the whole community are sadly broken. You split your mind to help yourself forget him. Childhood we missed. Be an ally to the pain you can't see, even when it's hard to be.
This is the floodgate, opening after a heavy rainfall, hoping that the village won't be flooded by the sudden rush of surprisingly salty water. The dam holds it in, contains it, until sometimes it gets to be just a little too much. This is storing your past in the corner of your closet, hoping the clutter won't occupy the space you built for your small, fragile self-confidence, but every now and then it likes to creep out to remind you that it's still there. This is remembering all the moments, from the first time you held his hand to the first time he pushed you away. You can piece events from your life together through dark flashbacks that will come when you least expect it. A flood of past emotions, still so vivid and alive, rushes over you like a monstrous wave in the ocean that sweeps you off your feet and spits you back out, salty and heaving for air. This is living in a dream state, one you wish you'd wake up from so you could feel the ground beneath your feet. This is instability of the body, heart, and mind. This is learning to walk again, carefully thinking through each step so you don't send yourself tumbling. This is questioning yourself constantly, wondering if everything you've set your heart to is worthwhile, because after all, your mind has been impaired by your drowsiness of nights staring at a dark ceiling, not knowing what's holding you from rest. This is operating on fumes, slowly disintegrating into just flesh and bone, slowly losing your focus and strength to your clouded head and aching heart. This is worrying so much about what has yet to change that you don't have the conscience to take a look at what is changing and see the nothingness that you are slowly evolving to. This is trembling hands. This is stuttered words. This is the inability to unclench your tense fists. This is silently staring into nothing while your friends laugh around you. This is holding yourself at gunpoint and not knowing which side to surrender. This is being the enemy and the survivor. This is telling yourself it's going to be okay, but not believing the words you use to try to soothe your rigid body. You don't know if you will be okay. You've lost control over yourself before you had a chance to try to grab the wheel. Maybe one day you'll learn that there's no use in trying to run from it, for it will shadow your every move. Maybe one day you'll learn that to stab it would be a mistake, because you'll find yourself with only your own blood on your hands. Maybe one day you'll see that it's better to tame the beast, to make friends with the monster, to compromise with the creature. Time, pain, tears, and sweat will be poured into this effort, but to come out hand in hand, mutually respectful of each other, is a prize well worth the cost. After all, a life of coexistence is better than no life at all.
A Woman's Place by Denise Frohman. I heard a woman becomes herself the first time she speaks without permission. Then, every word out of her mouth a riot. Say beautiful and point to the map of your body. Say brave and wear your skin like a gown or a suit. Say hero and cast yourself in the lead role. When a girl pronounces her own name, there is glory. When a woman tells her own story, she lives forever. All the women I know are perennials, marigolds, daffodils, soft things that refuse to die. I don't come from anything tamed or willing. I come from soil flossed with barbed wire. Meaning, Abuela could cuss you out with the same breath she kissed. You, with her booed a wild river. My mother doesn't rely on instruction manuals, or men, nor does she equate the two. Can't fix anything if you get out of her way. Says the best technology is her own two hands. But once I dreamed I had no teeth, just a mouth to hold other people's things. If this poem is the only thing that survives me, tell them I grew a new tongue. Tell them I built me a throne. Tell them when we discovered life on another planet, it was a woman, and she built a bridge, not a border. Got God and named gravity after herself.